Hello, everyone, and welcome into Apples and Ginos. Is Elias Pettersson actually a drop in fantasy hockey? I'm going to open the mailbag today, answering your questions on trade decisions, deep league holds, streaming strategy, and some big dynasty debates. Let's get to biz. Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Really appreciate you being here. I'm your host, Blake Creamer. Give me a follow over on X at Blake Creamer AG. Also, check out the Apples and Ginos Discord. The link is in the description. It's not too late, folks. You get your biscuits in there and you do it now. We got over 2,000 fantasy hockey managers talking shop. Myself is in there. Nate is in there. We got the Trade Talk boys in there answering questions all day long. And this show right here, our mailbag show that we're doing, I put out a call to our Discord for these specific questions. So we're going to be doing more shows like this towards the end of the season. So if you want to get your questions in and answered on the show, you got to get in the Discord. So do it. Come on, help us out. Let's just get right into it. We got so many questions here. I want to start with, the question that brought you here, maybe the Pettersson question, because I think that a lot of fantasy managers are panicking right now. And we've had a lot of questions regarding Petey. Elias Pettersson, is he a drop if not traded by the deadline? Ooh, this stinks, right? This show ain't no good. I mean, let's look at what Petey's been able to do this year. 35 points, 52 games. That's a 55-point pace, even worse than the 58-point pace he had last season. Yikes, right? His production on the power play, absolutely nuked, right? And the vibes are bad, right? It's just been a terrible season for the Canucks and Petey in particular, right? Digging in on some of his micro stats and stuff like that, it's pretty terrible. Like something that he's really good at, defensive stuff like zone retrieval, zone exits, things like that. That really has kind of fallen off as well. It's just been a terrible season for the Canucks. In terms of his actual, his individual metrics, like on the year, he's 295th on shots on goal per 60. He's 159th in individual expected goals per 60. That's gross, right? Not what you expect from an $11 million player, a guy that's supposed to be sort of the engine for your offense there. So it pains me. Yeah, I would say that, yes, Pettersson is a drop if not traded by the deadline, because what's going to happen? He's still here in Vancouver, right? This is one of the worst offensive teams in the league. They're dead last. And I think that, once Quinn Hughes was traded, that was really sort of the last chance, at any offense happening here in Vancouver, right? Quinn Hughes, one of the best play drivers in the entire NHL. And Petey just can't do it on his own, right? So now he had no one to play with for his line mates, and now he's got no one to get him the puck from the back end. So I think it's going to be more of the same, probably 50 to 55-point pace for Petey if he stays in Vancouver. And yeah, that's not going to cut it. That's streamer level stuff, right? If he does get traded, I think, he's still a pretty good player, right? He's a reclamation project at this point. But is he going to get the opportunity, right? Is he going to be 1C where he gets traded? I doubt it. There's rumors that he goes to Detroit. Like, they already have Larkin there, right? So Petey's not going to be getting 1C minutes. He's going to be more of a supplementary piece. Would he crack the power play in Detroit? Maybe not, right? It might be like a JJ Peterka situation when he went to Utah. So I don't know. I don't have a ton of hope here. I think that, yeah, if you need to cut your losses, go ahead and do that. In Vancouver, I really think that it sort of just wore him out. The Vancouver media here, the losing, it just nuked him. And I think he's worn out. I think he definitely does need a change. We still got the bones of a pretty good player. This is a guy who scored 100 points in this league not that long ago, right? Definitely a reclamation project at this point, like I mentioned. But I think if you need to drop Petey, go ahead and do that. I don't think we can expect even point per game, even 70 point, even 60 point Petey. I don't think is really realistic at this point. So sorry, Petey. Oh man, but I got my Canucks jersey on. If you get over onto YouTube, check us out. I'm repping Petey. And Tyler Myers, my boy, that long-necked legend, just got traded to the Dallas Stars here today. So shout out to Myers, shout out to Petey. Let's move on. Before we do, actually, sorry, I got the Apples and Ginos player evaluation tool. You can see kind of Pettersson's numbers, even in the last 5 games. Oh my God, 360th in shots goal per 60. You got to shoot the puck, Petey, and 273rd in individual expected goals per 60. it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So yeah, Petey's a drop if need be. Book it. All right. Next question. How are you planning on using your IR stashes to help you win the week? And yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, I think that it's more of a question maybe for earlier in the season, right? I think at this time, unless you're kind of tops in your league or you're really, you've got the bye locked down, you've got playoffs locked down, stashes are not really going to be something that you're doing. But because of because of the nature of injuries at this time of year, it's really hard to say that I personally have a specific strategy. It's different in every situation. So sometimes you leave a guy in IR when he's healthy because it makes sense for your schedule, and then you drop a guy to get more games in, right? If you're up in your standings, though, like I said, and you're just prepping for your playoffs, I love stashes, right? I don't mind taking an L even in a week if I can get a really good, high-quality stash. But unfortunately, this year, there's not that many guys that I would consider decent stashes. So if your deadline hasn't happened yet, I think today is a deadline in some people's leagues. February 25th was sort of the standard deadline in Yahoo. But if your deadline hasn't happened yet, Sidney Crosby, good stash. Josh Morrissey of the Jets, I think, could play again this season, but potentially a shutdown risk there just due to the Jets' standings. JT Miller now, he's out, but I think he's still going to be a hero in week 22 as long as he comes back to play. We still don't know what's going on with him and his injury. Probably wouldn't cost much to pick up JT either. You got Mark Stone as usual. He's out. Vegas definitely struggling without him. So I think there's a lot of benefit to having him come back, right? And then you got Alexander Barkov, right, as a long shot to make it back to even provide any kind of value for you there. Mikko Rantanen's another stash. I will say I liked it a lot better before I heard that he's going to be out potentially longer than 2 weeks. So yeah, something to think about. Those are some stashes there, but I just think it depends where you are in your standings if you're going to use that strategy. Okay. All right. Let's talk about some drippy drops. Some very specific player questions here. Need to drop one player: Josh Norris, Valeri Nichushkin, Troy Terry, or Sam Bennett Dyson. Sam Bennett, ESPN Points League. And yeah, it kind of pains me to say, but I think Josh Norris is probably the right answer here. Nichushkin and the Avalanche have a great schedule during weeks 21 to 24, they're pretty decent, right? And I think now that Lehkonen is out, Nuke is going to get more touches, potentially more minutes, right? And they need more out of him. He didn't do it last night, which is Tuesday night. But I mean, they were up big against the Anaheim Ducks. They won 5-1. But I think that Nichushkin obviously has potential. There's a chance he gets back on power play 1, but I think it'll take an injury to get him there. That's starting to turn around there in Colorado. They're starting to look okay. So I think I want to hold on to Nichushkin. Troy Terry, he's injured right now, but he's on an 80-point pace, right? And for God's sake, we got to get him in our lineup. So the Ducks have the best remaining schedule in the league, with 11 off nights. So that's really nice. So I think that's a reason to keep Troy Terry right there. They're tied with the Blues and the Rangers with 11 off nights, from now to the rest of the season. So that's really important stuff. And I do think that with Karlsson returning, Leo Karlsson, that Terry can find kind of that pass magic that was really going there as long as he is fully healthy. So I want to hold Troy Terry. Sam Bennett, I'd love to punt, but his opportunity is too good, and he's a very safe player, right, with the peripheral floor. So he's playing with Matt Tkachuk, and he's power play 1 currently in Florida. So it's kind of hard to get off of Sam Bennett, really. He's also pacing for 63 points. Pretty damn nice. I mean, 60th in shots on goal per 60 on the season. That's not too shabby either. So he's doing a lot really well. I think Norris is the guy. He is having a great season, 71-point pace, albeit in only 23 games. But a lot of that is just because he's been extremely efficient. He is that kind of player. You've heard me talk about Josh Norris on this podcast. I'm a big fan of him. But, his minutes aren't always great, right? They're the lowest of these 4. On the year, he's averaging just under 16 minutes time on ice. And that's not great, right? There's a risk there, right? If that efficiency goes away, now he's not on the ice very much either, and now he's not scoring. So I think he's the leader of the secondary scoring there in Buffalo. He's power play 1. I like all of these guys, but I think I would drop Josh Norris of those four. I'm sorry, my guy. All right, let's move on. Yahoo roster percent. Who are some players above 40 to 50% roster that should be cut for streaming with the trade deadline passed in most leagues? Yeah, that's good. So basically, I just cut out, I went on to Yahoo. I looked at the players that are 40 to 50% rostered, and I'll mention some of them here. Mike Matheson, this is as of yesterday. Mike Matheson, Beckett Seneca, Noah Hannafin, Tyler Bertuzzi, Jared McCann, Troy Terry, Colton Parayko, Devin Taves, Anton Lundell, Matvey Michkov, Gabe Landeskog, Neil Pionk, and Bowen Byram, all within that 40 to 50% range. So of those players, I'm definitely holding Seneca. I'm holding McCann. I'm holding Troy Terry, like we just talked about. And Anton Lundell, damn. I mean, this guy is on a 61-point pace. He's still getting a ton of minutes. He definitely has stepped up in Barkov's absence, but it hasn't equaled wins on the ice there for the Panthers. But Lundell is having a really solid season. Metrics are okay, but I think he's still going to get a bunch of run and a lot of offensive opportunities in the back, the last 20 games or so. So I'm trying to hold Lundell there. Gabe Landeskog, must roster player. Okay. As of yesterday, 41% rostered, way too low. We've seen what this guy can do. He's playing with McKinnon and Necas, the best even strength line in the entire league. They generate the most goals and they suppress the most goals. They do that, right? And Gabe Landeskog's on power play 1. That's a must roster player. But other than that, all the others can be dropped, including Matvey Michkov. They don't need to be dropped, but they could be. I think, it has to make sense for your team as usual. But again, I'm trying to hold Seneca, McCann, Terry, Lundell, and Gabe Landeskog. Book it. Okay. Next question. How confident are you in a Trocheck trade happening? Very confident. I think it's a foregone conclusion at this point. The guy's talking to his son about potentially getting traded. He's out there playing with the Rangers, like hyping guys up, trying to kind of enjoy the moment before he gets traded. I don't see how it doesn't happen. I think that this is a slam dunk for whoever picks him up. He's got great value on his contract. He's a real, this is the guy that you would want over PD, in my opinion, as a 2C. I think he brings so much more to the table. Things are, he doesn't want to go to a West Coast team, right? So that kind of throws a little cog in there. I could see the Minnesota thing happening, maybe Detroit as well, the Avs. I think there are a bunch of things that can happen, but like I said, already talking to his kids about it. I think the writing's on the wall. I'm excited to see where he goes, and his value, if he does get traded, I think goes way up, just in terms of his per game points. Obviously, if he doesn't get traded, Trocheck is going to be amazing for week 22 in fantasy hockey, because the Rangers have that great schedule where everybody else is sucking eggs. All right. So, get some Trocheck in your life. If you have them, you'll lose those Rangers games, but I think his value is going to actually go up. So there you go. My 2 cents on Trocheck. Let's move on. I want to talk about Frank Nazar. Is Frank Nazar going to find his groove? How do the underlings look? And in a very deep league, and especially looking at the terrible week 22 with the 2 off nights, wondering if he's worth the hold. Yeah, I mean, I like Frank Nazar a lot. I think we saw what he's capable of doing earlier on in the year, but he never found that groove again after he came back from injury, right? And I do think, though, that he's really going to be a big part of this team moving forward. He's top 6 power play 1. And I think that's worth a hold at this point. Let's look at some of his metrics on the year. 7 goals, 18 assists, 25 points in 45 games. That's a 46-point pace. But he was looking a lot better early on, right? But the minutes are there. He's averaging over 18 minutes average time on ice, 172nd in shots on goal per 60, 203rd in individual expected goals per 60. Not great, right? But, shooting percentage is down. On-ice shooting percentage is low as well. Chicago's still a team, building, right? They're further behind teams like, San Jose and Anaheim, because of the talent on the team. But Nazar is going to be a big part of that moving forward. So I'm interested in the player. And like you said, if you can hold them for week 22, the 2 off nights are going to be huge. And this is a power play 1 guy on those 2 off nights. Really good stuff. All that said, he's had a rough stretch for sure, right? He's not a must hold by any means, but you said it's a very deep league. And I think you're probably holding Nazar with this kind of deployment and opportunity. Hard to get power play one guys off the wire at this point in the season. So yeah, if you're going to drop them too, it always depends on who you're adding, but I'd be holding in your specific situation. Okay. All right. Personal question. Someone asked, how did you and Nate meet? Well, I'm glad you asked. Okay. Actually, the first time Nathan and I met was at a dance battle competition. Yeah. I knew about Nate and his reputation and his moves long before I ever met him, right? He's definitely a legend in the dance battle scene. I don't know if you knew that about Nathan, but he does that, right? His specialty, pop locking. He does that. We'll get him to do it on the pod next time. Hit us up in the comments if you want to see Nate pop lock on the next pod, because that's a really good way to do it. Just pressure him. But anyways, he's a wizard with that. Anyways, this specific dance battle, him and I actually made it to the final two. I got some moves as well. I can do the worm, right? I can't really, unless I have a dynamic cameraman, I can't really get down and show you all, but yeah, I can worm it up. You know what I'm saying? I do that. But yeah, we're in the final two. Tensions are high. Unfortunately, I couldn't tame the beast in that battle. Like Nate decided to just go off grid. He went against the grain, and he actually did a very stirring rendition of Swan Lake, the ballet, including a costume, a green apple tutu. He did that. All right. I've got pictures to prove that. And I will, again, for some YouTube comments, I'll put those pictures out there. Nate wouldn't care. He's fine. But anyways, his performance, beautiful. Everybody's crying, right? People were stunned. They'd never seen this kind of grace and athleticism in their lives. Okay. And neither had I, frankly. So anyways, after that, the only thing I could think to do was the running man. I just did that for 5 straight minutes. I was rattled. He just smashed me. Right. So that's fine. He won the battle, but what came from that battle was respect. All right. And brotherhood. So after the ribbon ceremony, Nate and I did the barbarian handshake. That's where you get right up there to the elbow, right? We exchanged emails and we were on our way. And yeah, it was only years later I started to get into fantasy hockey, and I saw that Apples and Ginos had a pod. It was Nate, and I just reached out on Discord, the Apples and Ginos Discord, folks. I reached out. I talked to Nate. I told him I was interested. I actually used to do a fantasy hockey podcast before I did this one called Fantasy NHL Today. And I'm proud of that. If you ever want to hear me when I first started podcasting, go to Spotify, check out Fantasy NHL Today. I got some good stuff in there. I got my first interview with Kevin Woodley on there. I've got, I interviewed Scott Rintoul, which was really fun. We talked about the West Coast Express in Vancouver. So check out Fantasy NHL Today. It's out there. My first podcast ever. Not the same as what I do now, but yeah, that's fine. Anyways, I messaged Nate. Nate got back to me, said, why don't you come on a pod and check it out? My first podcast with Apples and Ginos was me, Nate, Josh, and John Binkle. I think it was episode 68. So if you want to hear what that sounds like, go back into the Apples and Ginos catalog and hit episode 68. That's the first one where I joined, and I've been with Nate ever since. We've been having a great time. This has been one of the funnest, most satisfying things I've done in my life. Just, I have 2 kids. So, I mean, that and a marriage, that's the most satisfying. But, just creating something in the fantasy hockey realm, it's been really fun. So, yeah, that's how Nate and I met. Thank you for the question. We've been crossing streams ever since, and we do that. All right. I have to throw in my own stuff here. I don't know what's going on. All right. Talking about managing ads. Next question. How do you manage your remaining ads? Let's say you have 12 ads left for the remainder of the season and playoffs and have max 4 ads a week. Would you push to get a buy or maintain your ads for the playoffs? And this is a great question, because when you have leagues where you have a set amount of ads, like let's say you have, 30 ads for the season or 60 ads for the season, and then you have 4 ads per week you can make. Yeah, those leagues are kind of a weakness of mine, right? I have to stop myself from making a bunch of ads in situations like that. My favorite leagues are the ones with 4 moves a week, and then that just resets, right? I work within that. I actually play a category league with the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Boys, where we have 90 moves at the beginning of the year. You can do 7 moves a week. But I always spend an insane amount of moves at the beginning, and then I have to ration them out at the end, right? So in your specific situation, you have 12 ads left. The playoffs are 3 weeks. I would probably try and save as many as you can for your playoffs. But that said, I mean, if there's must roster players out there, guys like Landeskog, guys like Matt Duchene, then you need to do that, right? You're making your team better. You can justify that. But I think pushing for the buy is always a good idea. But if you use all your ads to get there, you kind of lose the advantage of having that buy, right? Because, the advantage is making moves while your league mates duke it out, right? But if you don't have those moves to make, you're kind of just sitting there and hoping your guys don't get injured. So I'd preach patience and caution at this point with your moves. Anything can happen between now and the playoffs. So I'd be saving those ads for your playoffs unless you see a must roster player. And if you want to kick any ideas around, hit up Nate or myself or get in the Discord and ask some questions and see if it makes sense. And, we can help you out there. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on that. Let's talk about the next question here. Olympic trends. Any post-Olympic trends, such as players who played in the tournament getting more rest, less ice time, or any changes in production? This is an interesting question. I like the question. I just don't think that there's been enough time for us to determine a trend, right? But just off the cuff, I haven't really noticed too much, to be honest. I think, the Hughes brothers, they've been run ragged with their media tour. Like they did the Tonight Show, they did Saturday Night Live. Quinn Hughes is Jack Hughes is flying out to New York and then flying back and playing a game. They're missing practices, but they're playing the games, right? So they seem to be handling that okay. I think Nathan McKinnon looks good as well. There was definitely some injury concern there, and he said as much, like he was dealing with a couple things, but he feels fine now. So he looks good. Mitch Marner, Shea Theodore, Mark Stone. These are guys that Marner and Theodore are dealing with illness. They've both been able to kind of push through that, but they've been in and out of the lineup. Stone was injured, like we said. I don't think playing in the Olympics helped Mark Stone, right? This is a guy that probably could have used that rest. I don't think it's enough time to really notice any trends at this point, but I'd be interested to hear your take too. The injuries that came out of the Olympics, damn, it wasn't worth it. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, if Canada wins, worth it, no problem. But they lost. Oh God. So now I have to deal with all these crazy injuries. And, I'm really looking forward to kind of just getting back to, it's an all-star break. That's great. And you go around and you just act like Nikita Kucherov at the all-star game. You don't give a damn. Who cares, right? And you come back and you're healthy and good. So we did have another question about the Olympics. Canadian curlers, cheaters or world's biggest cheaters? And then men's hockey, any chance of gold next time around? Yeah, to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of the Olympics. I watched the hockey, but I only watched it kind of more towards the medals, right? When that was going on. I enjoyed the break as well. So I do like that meme though of the Canadian curler, like with the finger on the thing. That seems like cheating to me. I mean, I'll take the gold, right? I mean, we all saw it. You would think that the judges at the Olympics saw that as well, and they thought it was fine. So okay, but biggest cheaters in the world? No. All right, I'm sure just a good old Canadian apology. We should be fine on that one. Am I right? Right. And then men's hockey, any chance at gold? Yeah, obviously, right? I like the Canadian team beat the hell out of the Americans in that gold medal game. The Americans just finished really well, and Connor Hellebuyck played out of his mind, right? Which could happen anytime. But I really thought Canada brought their A game. It's just they got Hellebucked, and the Americans buried their chances, and that team was an absolute wagon as well. So could have went either way, but I think next time around it'll probably go either way as well. I think the States it's 1A, 1B, or both 1As really. And you have to give the 1A to the Americans at this point because they're the reigning champions with the gold medal. So Canada always has a chance at the gold. We got some beauties coming up. Oh, Macklin Celebrini, he's going to play. I bet by the end of Macklin Celebrini's career, as long as the NHL stays involved, he's going to be Canada's leading scorer at the Olympics. No question. This guy's a stud. All right, but congrats to the Americans. All right, let's move on. Got to talk about, some streaming stuff here. So what do I do with Panarin or Tom Wilson in week 22? Should I drop to stream guys from Buffalo and New York Rangers and then try and pick it back up for the championship? I would advise against that. I think, like you'll hear Nate and I talk a lot about being ruthless, doing whatever you need to do, but I don't think we're there yet, right? I think that you have to ride with these guys. Panarin and Wilson are both good enough to be making your roster, right? So I'd be looking at guys that don't. Okay, like these guys will play on your busy nights. Maybe Wilson doesn't. I don't know. Like I don't know the rest of your roster. Panarin for sure is making your roster on those busy nights. So I'd be looking at guys that don't. Like I said, but yeah, the Rangers, Chicago, Boston, and Buffalo should be your targets for Week 22. Get on it now, folks. Make sure you have some players. Obviously, we got to get there, but it's going to be a really rough one. Check out our playoff episode that we did. We go into great detail on who you should be picking up and a bunch of different strategies that can help you in your fantasy hockey playoffs. All right. So there you go. Next question. Who would your hypothetical dream streams be for Week 21 with only 3 ads? Yeah, again, we talked about this in our playoff show, which you can find on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. But I will talk about some players that are 50% rostered and under here. Just remember that Week 21 is a quality streaming week. It's a great streaming week, and you can likely get guys in on heavy nights, right? So set your roster, see where those gaps are. Thursday, March 19th is the only beefer day in Week 21, and that has 11 games. So dodge that one, and you're probably good. But I'd be looking at power play 1 guys for sure on lesser teams, guys like Tyler Bertuzzi on Chicago, Landeskog for sure on the Avs. You got to look at the Rangers power play. After the trade deadline, if Trocheck goes, like, do we get Cooley and Laugh on there somehow? Like, we'll see. But if Miller's still out, like, who's going to play center there? We're just going to have to see. But whoever's on that Rangers power play, I'd grab them for Week 21 and ride them into Week 22. Good options there. Anthony Mantha on Pittsburgh. He's still power play 1. We got to see when Crosby comes back. But yeah, Mantha's viable. I think Jackson Blake on Carolina as well. Even though he's not power play 1, I really like that player. I think he's trending upwards. And then Josh Norris too for Buffalo. Again, Buffalo has a nice schedule just throughout these playoffs. Norris is power play 1. JJ Peterka as well. He's power play 2 currently, but he's shown that he can do stuff even in that role. It's been a little bit of a down season for Peterka, but I still trust the talent of the player. There's going to be lots of good options there for you in Week 21. Okay. Next question. In a Cats league with wins, save percentage, saves, and goals against average, which goalie would you be looking to target that people may be lower on, that you think can be acquirable for less than normal, so maybe a buy low, that you foresee ending the season off well? There's some good options out there, right? And I like these kind of questions. I like these kind of goalies, guys that are, maybe a little bit under the radar, right? And Joey Decord in Seattle, still a guy I'm interested in, right? I think that the numbers have been really good for Joey Decord. Goals saved above expected. He's doing pretty well there. Obviously, Alex Lyon, UPL, and Buffalo are the obvious ones. I think people are obviously figuring that out, right? The Buffalo's been playing really well. Spencer Knight in Chicago, he's been sensational this year for the Blackhawks. He's top 10 in the league in goals saved above expected, according to hockeystats.com. You love to see that. Dan Vladar, right? Another one who looks great under the hood. He's stealing games for the Flyers out there. He's catching bullets in his teeth. And I'm also going to throw in Anton Forsberg for the LA Kings for fun. I think that's a guy that Kevin Woodley has talked about in the past. And with the Darcy Kemper injury, I mean, we don't know exactly how long he's going to be out. Maybe Forsberg could get some run, right? And obviously that environment in LA is pretty good. And the addition of Panarin should be a net positive, right? That's the team that has had problems scoring, and now they brought Panarin in. So keep an eye out for Forsberg. He's played pretty well. He's in the positives in goals saved above expected, which is a great metric to sort of check out what goalies are doing, right, and how well they're playing. I would also say Joel Hofer, Elvis Merzlikins are guys that I think are going to get some run to finish the year. Merzlikins especially is interesting, right, as the Blue Jackets are in and around the playoffs, and Bonus has kind of rolled with him mostly during his tenure. So Merzlikins is definitely a guy I'm looking at. All right, hopefully that's helpful for you. Back to Petey, Elias Pettersson, real life trade thoughts. Elias Pettersson for Nate Danielson and a first. Yeah, I'd do that. I'd do that right now. The Canucks, they got to take it down to the studs. This is an $11 million guy. That contract turned out to be a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake at the time. I really don't. I think that based on Petey's trajectory, it looked like that was going to age well, right? This is a guy that just came off a 100-point season. But yeah, at this point, Nate Danielson, I'm not super familiar with the player. I mean, I know he's a first rounder. I didn't really dig in on Nate Danielson, but you get him and a first for Petey, and you get the $11 million off the books. I think that's a win for sure. I hope the Canucks don't retain any salary. They can't because he's still got so many years left on his contract. So get off that $11 million and then Danielson in a first. I'd do that for sure. I'd do that. I've heard some rumblings about some other stuff too. Boston potentially, like Mason Lowry. Oh man, can you imagine getting a Mason Lowry or Poitras? I don't know which one it was. It might have been Poitras. I think. I don't know if I'm saying that man's name right, but hit me up in the comments if I'm not. All right, you people keep me grounded. All right, and I enjoy that. All right, total buffoon right here. Okay. But yeah, I'm into the PD trade. I like that kind of value. Hopefully, they can get a little bit more. But that seems good to me. Let's talk about some Dynasty stuff. I'm always glad to get some Dynasty questions in the mailbag because I'm in 2 Dynasty leagues and it's not my best, right? Like I don't focus on it a lot. In these leagues, I kind of set and forget. And I could be better. I could be better at Dynasty, but I love the idea of valuing prospects. And, if I was to just roll with a couple teams, I think I would like to go just straight Dynasty and just really dig into my teams, but I'm not really doing that at this point. But yeah, these are good Dynasty questions and I'm happy to get into it. So first one, in a large Dynasty, if you secured the playoffs already, how much draft capital would you spend to strengthen? And he says, even my first rounder seems to be irrelevant in the setting because he'll end up being 13th to 16th overall, right? And then he has a secondary question. Why the hell is Scott Morrow not panning out the way I had envisioned? Let's dig in this. So, for the first part of that question, yeah, that's where I run into some problems in Dynasty is that I don't play the long game, right? I'm always trying to win. So yeah, if you secured playoffs already, I'd be looking to bolster, right? I'd be a straight buyer at the deadline. I'd be willing to get rid of prospects to get players that have good schedules that can help me out come playoff time so I can get that chip because, I think it's the same in the NHL, honestly. Like I wouldn't be a good GM, but I would at least have a good shot at a championship here and there. And once you win one championship, like it doesn't matter. You can have 3 or 4 bad seasons after that. And that's where, I'm not great at Dynasty, right? I think the goal should be keep your team like at a high level, like have an actual dynasty in a Dynasty league. That would be sick. But yeah, I'm all about kind of just winning now. And then, you retool for 2 or 3 seasons and then you try and win again. So yeah, I would definitely be getting rid of your first rounders to try and get your team looking a little bit better here. Secondary part of the question, Scott Morrow not panning out. Yeah. I mean, what I'll do is if you go over onto YouTube, I've got a nice visual here from hockeyprospecting.com. That's Byron Bader's model. He uses NHLE and kind of just compares different players. And one of the comparables for Scott Morrow was Josh Morrissey. And, I think Morrissey was 27 when he had his first big season. And I think that it could be a slow burn for Morrow, right? He's only played like 3 seasons in here. D-man that sort of profiled this way is like offensive defenseman, but, maybe like still trying to figure out things on the defensive side. I think, it can take a little while, right? And one of the things with Scott Morrow is like, at least this season and the last couple seasons, he's been on a team that's had playoff aspirations by all intents and purposes. They should have been the Rangers, one of the better teams in the league. That didn't happen. And the Rangers have been brutal with a lot of their prospects at times. Right. And I remember this happening in Vancouver a lot as well. When you have a good team, like, and you're in and around the playoffs, you're kind of near the top of your division. Like the Vancouver Canucks, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had Naslund, Bertuzzi, right? Then we had the Sedins. the team was too good to be, feeding minutes to a lot of these young guys, right? So the playing time just wasn't there. And then the coaches, they don't exactly feel confident putting these young guys out there for fear of the mistakes they might make, right? That all young players make. And I really think, it's just my opinion, but for prospects to develop properly, they need that assurance that you can go out, make a mistake, and you're not going to get stapled to the bench, right? I think it's almost better for prospects to be on a terrible team, but be afforded some opportunity, right? And maybe not the worst team in the world. Like we're seeing Connor Bedard on the Blackhawks, right? Last year was a really good example of just very, very frustrated Connor Bedard, right? Sometimes like it's a fine line. You can't be so bad. But we look at San Jose as well. They were really bad last year, but vibes seemed a little bit different there. I don't know. But if I had to choose my top prospect, I would like them to go on a team where they're actually going to get put into a situation that is good for them. Like these guys, these prospects, a guy like Scott Morrow, he goes from being the best offensive defenseman on his team to now he's playing as like a fifth or sixth or seventh D-man on an NHL club, right? And that, if any of you have played hockey or competitive sports, yeah, it's one thing to just, do a role for a team and be a team player, but you also want to affect the outcome of the game, right? And especially with your skill set, a guy like Scott Morrow, really deceptive defenseman, good facilitator, good shot. You want the opportunity to do what you've done for your entire career. So it's an interesting conundrum there. But yeah, I think, we just got to be patient. We got to be patient with Scott Morrow. I think it's going to be a better situation with the Rangers now because they're truly horrible. It looks like a rebuild is coming. And, you still have Adam Fox there, which is the role that Morrow would probably want. But yeah, Morrow just needs more minutes, pure and simple. I think he could see that as soon as next season. We just need the 18 to 22 minute, like get him in there, like give him sort of a little bit better than the Brandt Clark experience in LA. But yeah, 18 to 21 minutes, I think would get us there with Morrow. We could see a 30 to 40 point defenseman. And then maybe the next year that bumps up and then the next year that bumps up. Right. So stay strong, my guy. Scott Morrow is a beauty. I think he's got a real bright future. More Dynasty talk. In a keeper points league, if you had to keep one of Jacob Fowler or Jesper Wallstedt, who would you keep and why? It's a really fun question. Yeah. Cam Fowler. Yeah, don't keep Cam Fowler, please. All right, Jacob Fowler, yes. Cam Fowler, no. Okay. But Jacob Fowler, very decent in 10 games with a big club here in Montreal, but it wasn't enough to unseat Sam Montembeault and Jakub Dobeš, right? Like he's obviously not quite ready if he wasn't able to do that. But he had a 4-4-2 record. That's not too shabby. But with Laval here in the AHL, pretty nice season. 18 wins, 7 losses, 2 overtime losses, .915 save percentage, 2.23 goals against average. That's really nice stuff, right? So obviously this is one of the most highly touted attendees in the AHL, in the minors, really, that could potentially break in the NHL here soon. And then you go over to Jesper Wallstedt. He came out ready to go this season. 25 starts for him, 14 wins, 6 losses, 4 overtime losses, and then 4 shutouts, right? Tied for second in the NHL, Wally. What are you doing? Really nice stuff. And he's got decent, stats as well. 2.81 goals against, 911 save percentage. Somebody call 911. Or don't. But yeah, I think Wallstedt needed this year for sure, because last year, I think, it was a lot closer. These two players, you could say that Jacob Fowler was probably maybe had the edge on who was the better goalie and who had the brighter future. But in terms of the better goalie at this point, I think you have to go Wallstedt just because of how he popped up this season at the NHL level. I think in Dynasty, we always have to look at the prospect, if that prospect has a pathway to minutes and opportunity, especially not just the minutes, right? But minutes that are going to serve that player. And I think that after this season, Fowler has that pathway, right? Maybe a little bit better than Jesper Wallstedt. Dobeš has been good. He has a great record, but the underlying stink. Habs, I think they're looking to do something here. They're looking to put it together. They've got a good young top 6, elite options at D, but the goaltending so far 20th overall on the season. And that's not good enough, right? And that's not going to get you there, especially in the playoffs, right? That doesn't work. So they need a legit starter. I mean, if they don't make a trade for a goalie here at the deadline, I think that Fowler could get that as soon as next season, right? Or certainly a bigger look, maybe kind of a similar look that Wallstedt got here this season with the Wild. And then over to, Wallstedt, he's in a little bit of a situation with the Wild. I think they're committed to Gustafsson for term, right? Are the Wild going to move on from Wallstedt in the next week and maybe try and load up even more? I've read that. I think that's an option and should be an option. Wallstedt is ready to go now, I believe, at least be a number one, a 1A with the team. And before the Quinn Hughes trade, Minnesota really wasn't great when it came to expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. And they're still only 22nd in that metric, right? But the goalies they've been fired. They've been, roasting out there. And Wallstedt included. He's had a little bit of a downturn here. So he's not scorching the way he was, but all this to say, I want both these guys on my Dynasty team. They're both amazing goalies, but if I had to choose one, I'd go with more of the sure thing, which we've seen proof of concept, Jesper Wallstedt at this point. I think he's safer and he's shown that he can perform at this level. But yeah, he just needs to stretch that out over the whole season. And can he do it with a starter's workload? I don't know, right? I think there's a chance he gets traded, and that makes some sense to me. I think Gustafsson is young enough. He's good enough to be the starter there in Minnesota. So yeah, my 2 cents on that. Good question. Also, who do you think will be the NHL first, or who do you think will be in the NHL first and producing better between James Hagens and Porter Martone next year? Good question. Yeah, to me, it's just the same process, right? Same thought process. When it comes to Dynasty, I don't really like the long game. I mean, that's why I'm not a great Dynasty player, but I'm always looking for this exact thing. Who's going to get in and perform the fastest? And in this case, I think Martone is that player. I think he's got size. He's got speed. He's played with men before in the World Championships. In the NCAA, he's the 8th best scorer. Pretty damn nice. He got 21 goals, 22 assists in 30 games. That's elite. 4th best, actually, in points per game. And then Hagens, obviously, elite as well, right? He does have more points than Martone, but less points per game. When you're looking at the two players, they're pretty different, actually. Like, Hagens, very much a kind of a dynamic play driver, more of a zone entry guy, whereas Martone profiles as a power forward with his size, but he's known more for his facilitation ability as a playmaker. Crazy stuff. I mean, yeah, I think that of the two players, Porter Martone has a better pathway to the NHL on the Flyers with their rebuilding group, as long as he can sort of endear himself to current coach Rick Tocchet, right? We've seen what's been happening with Matvei Michkov, frustrating stuff, but I think I take Martone here. Both players have a bright future, though. I could see both, really making an impact for their NHL squads. Like Hagens, I just don't see, I could see him as a 3C, for the first couple of years, whereas Martone, I could see him cracking the top 6 even next year, right? If he has a good training camp. So my 2 cents on those two exciting prospects. If you want to head over to YouTube, check out, again, hockeyprospecting.com. I've got comparisons between Jacob Fowler and Jesper Wallstedt. And you can see, obviously, Wallstedt had a down year here in his draft plus 4 year, which Jacob Fowler is just coming into right now. But pretty similar here. Obviously, Wallstedt was one of the best, if not the best goalie prospect, from 2021 to 2022, and then sort of fell off a little bit, but it's really nice to see what he's been able to do in the NHL. I think Fowler is on the right trajectory here and is probably going to make an impact as soon as next season. And then I've got the same comparison here with Porter Martone and James Hagens. Hagens had his draft minus 1 year he was the talk of the town, right? And then kind of fell off a little bit, became more of a supplementary player there in 2025. And now he's kind of getting back to biz. He's sort of putting the team on his back, whereas Porter Martone, I think, has a little bit, he's a little bit further along in his development. Obviously, they're both, should be NHL players. But definitely check out hockeyprospecting.com. Byron Bader, absolute beauty. That's confirmed. Okay, we're almost done, folks. Thank you so much for these questions. This is really fun to talk about. We got to talk about the Coiler. Oh, he's filling the bowl. The upper decker. All right. Don't do that, Charlie. All right. You don't go to someone's house and do an upper decker. Okay. Unless you don't like that person. Okay. But he's just doing it willy-nilly, and you shouldn't do that. Okay. Anyways, the question is Charlie Coyle, rest of season outlook. I think that it's been surprising, right? If Charlie Coyle stays with Columbus and on power play 1, maybe he can keep a 55 to 60 point pace going. Like, I kind of want to look at Charlie Coyle's numbers here because I didn't pull them up. Bear with me, folks. I want to look at this, but yeah, he's had a monster season. 46 points in 60 games. That's a 63 point pace. Good efficiency. He's shooting 15%, but that's not unsustainable. Power play, not really getting it, and now he is. So, yeah, it's been good, but I mean, we just haven't seen this type of thing really before, right? Where he had a good stretch in Boston there in 2024, right? Had 60 points there. So it's in the wheelhouse, but I just don't trust it. But yeah, I mean, Charlie Coyle last game, 70% power play share, played over 22 minutes. Like, that'll play. That's a player that needs to be on your roster. So I think we're holding Charlie Coyle for now if you got him. I also think, though, he could potentially be moved at the deadline for a contending team. I said the Blue Jackets are in and around it, and I think if they decide they're really going to try and make a push for the playoffs here, like Coyle, the Coyle would be their rental, right? They would just keep him because he's a UFA next year. He's also 34. Right. So he's a guy they could lose for nothing, but his value right now is about as high as it can possibly be. So I think it's win-win for them. If they keep him, I think Charlie Coyle's numbers he could maintain this pace. If he gets traded, I think it's going to be back to being a role player for him with 40-point upside. He's not going to be getting power play 1, but he will fill the bowl. He does that. I've seen bigger hunks of corn in my crap. Sorry, folks. Had to get it. That's Austin Powers. Anybody see that? All right. The Coiler. Oh, potty humor. It's the lowest form of humor, and that's all I have. Okay. So what does that say about me? Don't comment in the comments about that. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very sensitive. All right. This trade just happened in my league. Jack Hughes and Marty Necas for Dylan Larkin and Willie Nylander. League is basically standard ESPN with blocks and hits lightly reduced. Which side? Give me Hughes and Necas all day. Okay. Necas and the Avs back to their offensive ways. And Necas is a big part of that. He's not just a passenger, right? He's driving play at an extreme level. Played very well with McKinnon out of the lineup when he was kind of just taking some rest there. Like I said earlier, the Avs by far the best team in the league at 5-on-5. And this line in particular, Necas and McKinnon, easily the best line in the league when it comes to goal differential. Just a cut above, right? I want a piece of that. And then you get Jack Hughes as well. Like, Jack Hughes has been putting up some good games here the last little bit. I think he's feeling his plums after the Olympics, right? And that's fine. Yeah, they scored the golden goal. You love to see that. I just think that it's a fine risk to take for a guy that potentially could produce at a second-round level rest of the season, most likely with Jack Hughes. Even on this terrible offensive team, if they score, Jack Hughes is going to be on it, and he's shown that so far. And in terms of the other side there, vibes are bad in Toronto for Willie Nylander, right? They're likely sellers at the trade deadline. And I'm just not sold on Willie Nylander this season. It's been good, right? He's on, what is his pace here? I got to look at this. Yeah, 104-point pace. Like, that's pretty nice, Willie. But only 44 games. Metrics aren't great. Like, shots on goal per 60, 143rd. Individual expected goals per 60, 131st. Down, right, from what he normally does. Right. So I just think that I don't know what kind of team we're going to see here at the end of the year with the Leafs. And is Austin Matthews like fully healthy? We just haven't seen the same kind of pop in his shot or pep in his step. Right. We haven't seen that with Big Poppy. So I'm kind of wanting to get away from the Leafs at this point. And I think Dylan Larkin is fine. Right. But the team is very reliant. Detroit, I'm talking about, very reliant on a dominant power play. And yeah, they aren't generating a ton of 5-on-5. And also, it looks like they're trying to make a splash at the trade deadline here. So what does that do to the Red Wings team chemistry? Let's say they do get Petey, right? Does Larkin's workload diminish? Maybe, right? And they've been kind of kicking tires on Trocheck as well. So lots of variables there for a guy that's only pacing for 73 points, and that's Dylan Larkin. So, and metrics are good for Dylan Larkin, though. I will say that, like, he's 14th in the league in individual expected goals per 60. I think, yeah, like, he's a great player, and we saw that in the Olympics. Like, this guy's nuts. And he's got access to a really good power play there in Detroit. So it makes sense. This trade is fine, but I'm smashing except for the Hughes side. No questions. Like, Jack Hughes on the year, 20th overall in shots to goal per 60 and 52nd overall in individual expected goals per 60. I think that, we're going to get probably a nice little finish to the season for Jack Hughes. And you get Nichushkin on top of that, who's pacing for 104 points himself. Book it. All right, get those players and do it now. Next question. Jett Greaves. Would you hold Jett Greaves still? He's been inconsistent. Definitely a tough hold. Other options are Vladar, Wolf, Bobrovsky, Saros, Ullmark, Markstrom, Stolars, UPL. What do you think? It depends on your roster and how many goalies you have as well. Like, if he's your third goalie, I'm bouncing Jett Greaves, no question. If he's your second goalie, like, I just haven't seen, like I said earlier, with bonus, I feel like he's prioritizing Merzlikins a little bit more. I mean, last little bit, they have gone, one game on, one game off, one game on, one game off. And Greaves did just win his last game 3-2 against Nashville. So you're getting a true goalie share, or you're getting Merzlikins. So I think Greaves is the 1B here. So I don't know. You don't have to drop, but you've got some reasonable options on the wire here. I would say what makes sense for your squad. I of those options you mentioned, I really like UPL. I have UPL in a lot of spots. Even if that's just a straight goalie share, one game on, one game off, I'd rather have UPL than Greaves personally. I want to see what Nashville does, because I think Saros, he has not had a great year, but he's a great goalie. And, if they win a couple games and they kind of hang around, I think Saros is a reasonable option, but I'm not really too interested in the other ones. Like I talked about, Dan Vladar is a great goalie under the hood, but he's having to catch bullets in his teeth to get some games won there for the Flyers. And it's not exactly something I want to trust for fantasy. So I'd say if you're going to drop Greaves, I like UPL, I like Saros, and, low key, I like Dan Vladar. But you don't have to get off Greaves. I think it's comparable. Let's move on. Next question. I want to talk about Big Dougie. As a Dougie Hamilton drafter, I'd love to hear thoughts on what the scope might look like, whether he stays in New Jersey, and if he gets traded too. So, let's talk about Dougie really quick. It's not been a great year for Dougie. Obviously, we've talked enough on this podcast about the New Jersey Devils and how stinky they've been offensively. But Dougie is part of that. He's on a 37-point pace, 9 goals, which is nice, 16 assists, 25 points in 56 games. But what you get with Dougie is he's 3rd overall in the league amongst defensemen in shots to goal per 60, 4th overall in individual Corsi for per 60. So he chucks pucks, and then 10th best in individual expected goals per 60 for defensemen. So this is what matters for fantasy. So I'm in on Dougie Hamilton, right? I think that he's a really low risk guy at this point, and I've got him in 3 spots. One spot where he was dropped after being scratched in a league where good D were scarce, right? So he got scratched and someone dropped him, like panic dropped him, and I just scooped him up, and I've been loving that. So I think the reason he's low risk to me, if he stays in New Jersey, I think we see more of what we've got in the last few games. The minutes are down a little bit. I think he only played 18 minutes last night, but he had a goal and an assist. So I think that he could pace for 40 to 45 points with double-digit goal potential. If he gets traded, I think it depends on where. He's definitely not the Dougie Hamilton of old. He might be more of like a Brent Burns kind of guy at this point in his career. If he gets traded, sort of kind of a backup guy on a good team if their top power play quarterback goes down. But I just think that he's in a good spot to return some value and hopefully finish the year strong. Certainly on New Jersey. And something I've even read just today is that, people are talking about Shimon Nemec instead of Dougie Hamilton now at this point, because Hamilton's contract is so hard to move and people aren't really interested in taking that on, right? He's got 3 more seasons at $9 million per. which is it's a bit spicy if you're going to play a guy 18 minutes, right? So if he does get traded, I'm hoping that like because of that contract, they give him some run. If you give Dougie Hamilton 22 minutes and power play 1, he can return you some excellent value. So all that to say, I think he's going to have a good end of the year. I think it's low risk to have this guy, and hopefully you kept him and didn't drop him when all that bad stuff was happening, because he's doing stuff now. Shot monster from the back end. You'll love to see it. All right. We're talking about the New York Rangers here really quick. Thoughts on JT Miller, not out for the season, right? He's got a new injury. And since JT is hurt, should I add Alex Lafreniere now? Let's talk about it, right? Definitely a disgusting season for JT Miller and the Rangers. What the hell is going on? Yeah, I mean, I think that Miller might be cooked here in New York. Like, he needed a reset in Vancouver because of what happened there with Pettersson and everything else. And now he looks like he might need one in New York, like after one season. So I'm seeing a common denominator here. Like, this guy's an epic dingleberry, right? Just really like the mental part of the game. He doesn't seem very strong in that. And came into the year kind of saying all the right things, right? No BS. That was the motto for the Rangers. And he's just, since that point, he's just given straight BS in his interviews, right? And you know, we've seen the lack of effort in some of the plays here this season from your captain. It's pretty gross, right? So I'm not a huge fan. This is a guy I kept in a keeper league that I have. I've had him for a couple of years. Like, I'm not keeping him this year. No way. Like, I don't see, at least with this iteration of the Rangers and how JT Miller is playing currently, like, I don't see him getting back to a 99-point pace. He did that with the Canucks based on massive efficiency and amazing power play numbers with a guy called Quinn Hughes on the back end on that power play. So I'm just not seeing it there for JT Miller in New York unless they do something different. And then in terms of his injury, right? Like, we don't know anything about that injury yet. He played his last game, full complement of minutes, right? He played 19 minutes and now he's on IR, right? And they didn't really give us an update. So I do think there's a world where JT Miller maybe gets shut down, right, for the year. I haven't heard anything like that, so don't quote me on that. But like, what do the Rangers have to play for now? I mean, I would love to see him come back. This is your captain. You should be fighting to come back, right? And help change the culture on this team that's been terrible for 2 straight years now. But when he does come back, what are my thoughts? I think, you know, what does this team even look like? Or like, what do they do at the trade deadline? If Trocheck's gone, you know, now Miller, who's a pretty good power play performer, he's lost Panarin, and he's likely to lose his friend Trocheck, right? I could see Miller mailing in the rest of the season, right? With some of the worst body language you probably ever see from a captain. So, yeah, all that to say, I'm not high on JT Miller, but unfortunately, he still has a lot of value just for those weeks 21 and 22 in your playoffs alone. And he needs to be rostered for that. This guy still bangs, right? Good hits, good riffs. He's going to be the last man standing, most likely. Him and Mika Zibanejad. After week 22, though, I'm punting this man into the sun. Thank you for your service, JT Miller. Get the hell out of my sight. Oh, my God. Take your stank face and get out of here. All right? Jeez. It's not a good insult. I'm sorry about that. All right. But, yeah, it's rough stuff in Ranger land there. Last couple questions here, folks. So we're almost done. Thank you. My league's trade deadline passed. Playoff weeks 21 to 23. He's got a 12-team points league. Gave me, you know, the points here. Just pretty standard stuff. Decisions to make before playoffs. He's got Nico Hischier and Dylan Strome. Strome obviously only has the 2 games here this week in week 19. Then he has a good early week 20. And after that, he's on the bench weeks 21 to 23. Question, drop or hold Dylan Strome till next Thursday, or hold him and drop Nico Hischier? And yeah, it's a good question. The guy who asked me this question too, I spoke about fantasy NHL today earlier. This guy right here asked this question, was with me from the beginning. My man Ro. I love this man. So thank you for the question, my man. Thanks for sticking it out with me here through the years. I'm going to help you out. Okay. I do think this is close with Strome and Hischier, but I'm holding Nico there, I think. I know it's been a gross season for him and the Devils. It's not great. But yeah, sorry, I want to look at something here. Let's put this in. Okay. Yeah, I think that there's been some hope the last few games with the Devils. Hischier hasn't gotten in on it, right? Which stinks. But that power play, if that gets going, Nico will, right? He's on that power play. He's the captain of the team. I think the Devils, as you mentioned in your question, they have a better overall schedule during the playoffs. And of the two players too, Nico Hischier, he plays more minutes. He's a bigger part of the team. Whereas Dylan Strome on Washington, his line gets sheltered offensive minutes and power play time, which is great for fantasy. That's fine, right? But if they're up big in a game, are they going to be putting Dylan Strome out there? No, right? But if Nico Hischier with the Devils, like if they're up, then they're going to want Hischier out there for his defensive prowess. If they're down, they're going to want Nico Hischier out there for his offensive prowess. I think there's more ways that Hischier gets you production than Dylan Strome at this point. Not to mention that Nico Hischier has better peripherals as well. Strome doesn't really do that. So, yeah, I think that Nico is safer, and I'd be dropping Strome. Of these two players, I'd be dropping Dylan Strome. I don't want to drop either. I think both are absolutely viable and should be able to get you something in your playoffs. But, yeah, just for fun, these two players, Nico Hischier, 58-point pace, Dylan Strome, 66-point pace. It's not great for either player, right, after good seasons last year. So, anyways, that's what I got to say about that. And then we've got last second buy lows and sell highs. Love it. My deadline is soon. I've got guys like Landeskog, Noah Dobson, Luke Hughes, Matt Tkachuk, Panarin, Erik Karlsson. Yeah. With those players aside, I'll just give you some real quick buy lows and sell highs in my estimation. Buy lows to me, Sam Reinhart of the Florida Panthers. Yeah, it's been a rough season for sure for Sammy. Just the Panthers without Barkov, obviously we see what he means to the team, and then missing Tkachuk early on definitely kind of sewered the Panthers. But Reinhart's been really good as of late. I will say, only 2 points in the last 5 games, but he's all over it. He's a great power play performer. This is a guy that should definitely be getting to biz here on the year. 27th overall in individual expected goals per 60. He should be doing a lot better. Sammy Reinhart, we salute you. I think his efficiency is down a little bit as well, so I like him. Brandon Hagel as well, I think, is a guy that should be doing a lot better. I think only 2 points in the last 5. I'd have to check that, but yeah, it's a guy that's a great even strength performer on a really good team. I think Hagel's going to be better. Adam Fox is another guy I threw on here. I'm not expecting the world for Adam Fox. Obviously he hasn't really done too much. 3 games back after the Olympic break, 0 points, but ice time is there. Metrics are okay, but this is a player I'm really high on. This is a player that the analytics community is really high on. So even with this iteration of the Rangers, I still think Adam Fox has a ton of value, and he's like right now his perceived value pretty damn low, especially with what's going on in New York. See if you can pick up Adam Fox. That's a guy we talked about in our playoff show as a guy you should target, and I still agree with that. And then lastly, Timo Meier. Hell yeah. Timo Meier's been really snake bitten this year. Probably one of the most snake bit players on the New Jersey Devils. So I think that you're going to want to get some Timo in your life if you can. He's got some amazing numbers. I'm just looking at something right now. I want to shout out my boy, 18 Skaters. He's got a thing, Patreon, and he's got something called Stream Sheets, which is really good. I use it all the time, and you should too. All right. Stream Sheets is elite. It's basically a way to kind of see how your players are doing in terms of expected goals, expected on ice assists, right? It's all Mark's model. It's really high quality stuff. But in the last 2 weeks, Timo Meier, he's third best in expected goals per game according to Mark's model. He's number 1 in shot attempts per game. He's third in shots. Like, this guy's chucking the puck. He's just not getting rewarded. So I think you really need to get some Timo Meier in your life. Shouldn't cost you very much. And we talked about the Devils' schedule. Really good stuff. All right, let's talk about some sell highs. You said you had Matt Tkachuk there. I think that makes some sense. Matt Tkachuk's numbers have been really good as of late. So it's not like we're getting off him because he's not playing well. Since he's been back, 5 points in 5 games, 44th overall in shots to goal per 60, 39th overall in individual expected goals per 60. Decent numbers, right? And obviously we know the quality of the player, really good. He's pacing for 76 points. That's low. But, I think that he still has that name brand. So I think you could flip Matt Tkachuk and get somebody that can help you for your playoffs. So I'd be interested in moving Matt Tkachuk. Sam Bennett, I'll throw him in there as well. I talked about him, 5 points in the last 5 games. He's getting power play 1 and playing with Tkachuk. So his value is inflated a little bit, but I think the Panthers right now are like the Titanic, right? It's just sinking. They're not going to get better. They're going to get worse. They've lost a ton of games here, and they're going to be out of playoff contention pretty damn soon. They pretty much are at this point. So if I can move off those players and get somebody else, I'd love to do that. Charlie Coyle, I'll throw on here as well. 6 points in the last 5 games. I talked about him. It's not something that I think is really sustainable, but right now he's getting the minutes and he's getting opportunity. See what you can do there. And then Toivo Teravainen is another one I threw in here. Good player, good power play performer, 5 points in the last 5 games. See what you can do. He's pacing for 43 points, so it's not like a season sell high. It's just he's got some good value right now. See if you can flip him or add him in on a trade and maybe get somebody else. And last question. Thank you, folks. Last 2 questions. Is Lehkonen a drop now? He's deemed week to week. I'm in first place with no buys possible, but he's in IR hell. Just need the affirmative to drop. Yes, you can drop Lehkonen if you need to in 12 teamers and less. 14 to 16 team leagues, you're thinking about it a little bit. If you don't have the IR spots though, and you can't absorb the lost games played, then yeah, you got to bounce Lehkonen. We can't hold him here at this point. If he's taking zeros, I think Landeskog has taken his spot pretty clearly on line 1, power play 1. I'm not sure he's going to get it back. So yeah, sounds like he is going to be back, Lehkonen, before the actual NHL playoffs, but the timeline's still unknown. So if you can stash, I would, but if you can't, bounce him. And then lastly, thoughts on Nico Hischier for Will Smith, a trade. I'm in a head-to-head points league, standard ESPN scoring. I think in a bubble, I'm taking Will Smith there. I think he's been a better player here this year. Obviously, the points have been pretty good. He's pacing for 77 points. Nico Hischier's pacing for 58. So yeah, and Smith's been coming on, a really, really nice play from Smith as of late. Whereas 4 points in his last 5 for him. Nico only 2 goals in his last 5. Metrics are fine for both, but you just need to think when your playoffs are, right? What place are you in? Devils play 11 games with 5 off nights in week 21 and 23, and then 13 games with 3 off nights in weeks 22 to 24, whereas the Sharks play 10 games and 2 off nights in week 21 to 23. That's not good, but they have the best schedule in weeks 22 to 24 with 14 games and 6 off nights. So I think make sure it makes sense for your team and schedule. I think I'd rather have Smith at this point, but I'm keeping playoff schedule in mind. And let's say if your playoffs are weeks 21 to 23, I'm keeping Nico. If your playoffs are weeks 22 to 24, I'm taking Smith. Book it. And then just in a bubble, I'm taking Will Smith because I think he's playing better at the moment and potentially is a better player this year. So that's it, folks. That's it. Oh, yeah, we did it. A bit of a beefer, but I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for all your questions. I really appreciate that. If you could, please join the Discord community like we talked about. Link is in the description. If you could also rate, review, subscribe, comment on any of our stuff, it really helps us out. Especially, can somebody head over to Apple and give us some reviews? I would really like that. We haven't had any reviews in a long time. And the ones we have had, one said that I was cheeks. And I don't know what that means, all right? Like bum cheeks? I don't know. Is that bad or good? Because some people like bum cheeks, and I'm one of them. Okay. So yeah, anyways, head over to Apple. Please give us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. Hit us up on the Apples and Ginos Patreon. Link is in the description as well. But that's it, folks. Hopefully this episode brought you some value, helped to get a little bit better in fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard from came from Natural Stat Trick, 18 skaters. I was on Elite Prospects. All the microstats you heard from came from all 3 zones. Many thanks to my brother, Matt Creamer, for supplying the music to the podcast. That's it, folks. Celebrate your day. Bye for now.